Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, man.
Derek.
Congratulations. Yeah. Are you guys going to bring some of
Yeah, let's bring any of the cast who's here. Come on down. Some of the girls.
I'm a huge horror fan, besides being a fan of these two gentlemen here, and so I'm excited to be at Screamfest. I love this festival. Nick, you're a sick man. What? You have a wife, a lovely wife, very charming. You have children. Why this? No. Talk about, you know, the need to do a horror film. And how did this film come about? Why this idea? You sick mother? No. Why Girlhouse?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you all for coming out and supporting the film. It's great to see all of you. It's a great audience, and appreciated the response. I think the origin story is I started working with Trevor about 4 or 5 years ago after he moved from Canada to LA, and he had just finished a second horror film. So Brook Street had already made 2 horror films. The first one was Jack Brooks' Monster Slayer, which was sort of kind of an Evil Dead sort of homage, kind of campy horror comedy. Their second film was called The Shrine, played here in 2010, and that was sort of more kind of a demon movie, possession movie, steeped in this sort of supernatural. And we talked about making a third, kind of rounding out the trilogy and making a third Brook Street horror film. And we figured, why not go with kind of a different subgenre of horror and try a slasher. And you know, the slasher subgenre has been, for the most part, kind of dead for the last decade. I mean, horror is, no pun intended, that's good, yeah. Brian Fuller, everybody. Yeah, I just think horror had gone in kind of a different direction, you know, with found footage stuff and sort of The Ring and The Grudge and sort of, you know, demon chicks with creepy, stringy black hair crawling across the ceiling. And those movies are awesome, we love them, but the movies that we grew up on as kids were for the most part, the horror movies were mostly slasher films. And so we talked about, could we take a shot at kind of rebooting the slasher a little bit and do it in kind of a classical way. So we went back and watched all the 70s slashers, and this movie, I mean, the structure of this film is almost to a T Halloween. I mean, the killing, by today's standards, by the modern standards, the killing starts very late. It starts at the midpoint. And I would say that's probably the biggest gamble we took, was kind of committing to a sort of a classical structure that today's audiences might get impatient with. We don't know, but we tried to fill the first half with more character development than you typically get in those movies, so that by the time the killing starts, you actually care about these people.
Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Trev, you want to add anything to that?
Also, from a business perspective, horror is, you know, it's a great genre because there's dedicated fans for the genre, and they're a lot of fun to make, and that's you know, that's why I got my start making horror films. They can be made on a budget, you know. You don't need to blow up cars and things like that. It's creaky doors and yeah, they're a blast to make. So you know, we knew we wanted to find something, and when Nick wrote Girlhouse, I couldn't put it down. I thought it was just fantastic. It felt really fresh. It felt contemporary. It had all the different camera angles, iPhone, computer, security camera angles. It was packed with beautiful women, and we just knew it was going to be fun to make. And it didn't feel gratuitous. It didn't feel like something when I was reading it that, you know, I don't know, it didn't feel cheesy. It really felt like there was a lot of thought in it, and yeah, I was a big fan of the script, so we moved forward, and it was a blast.
You know, Nick, especially, you talk about slasher stuff around Scream, and I know you did last summer, then you have the J-horror stuff, and then you have found footage, which is arguably the most current, sort of passé in a bit now, but genre or subgenre of horror. Was there ever a moment where you're like, oh, we should make this as a found footage movie? Or, I mean, I love the fact that this incorporates voyeuristic elements of found footage, but it doesn't go that way. I mean, it invites you in and makes you, like, you know, culpable in some effed up way about what you're watching, which I think is kind of the sick genius of the movie. But was there a moment of like, well, what if we did 90 cameras and the whole movie was just cameras, or was that ever a conversation there?
It actually wasn't. I mean, I think that we, you know, again, part of the reason for going with this sort of throwback style slasher was to get away from that. But we were sort of having our cake and eat it too, because obviously the technology becomes a character in the film, right? So it's like we didn't use found footage, but all the camera angles and the screens, the iPhones, the computers, they became, we wanted them to feel as seamless as possible, but they become sort of a character, and they're feeding everything that you're talking about, the voyeurism, the alienation, the isolation. I mean, you know, the lover boy character. I mean, this is a sad byproduct of the sort of, you know, the social networking culture, the X-rated version or not, is that people are sort of glued to their screens and they're not having real social interaction. So when he gets in an office and sort of gets berated by this woman, he can't even open his mouth. I mean, he's just, you know, sort of dysfunctional. Yeah, I think we wanted to stay away from found footage, but see if we could get the technology in there in a seamless way. And quite honestly, it was a challenge. I don't know if you, I mean, you obviously were aware of it, but there were over 300 visual effect shots in this movie, which for a movie of this size, with this budget level, is just unheard of. And most of them aren't that interesting. They're just screen replacements. We just, every time there was an iPhone or a computer on screen, it was a green screen. And we had to put in the right text with the right timing and the right website look, and then, of course, put in the right video feed of whatever was going on. So that took a really, really long time.
Talk about even down to the logo, which is great. I mean, personally, I don't, you know, we had this momentary debate where it's like, do you call it Loverboy, do you call it, but I mean, Girlhouse, it's so effective from the first moment of the movie you have that logo. I mean, it is seamless. I mean, I was watching this movie, you know, I saw it once on a small screen, watched it on a big screen, you're like, that logo is present in, what is it, like half the movie, basically. So how did that logo, and even when one of the characters walks into the sort of security facility at one point, you see
Trevor.
Trevor's
cameo.
Hitchcock cameo. Well done, sir. You died well, and nobly, I might add. How, you know, talk about the logo and talk about incorporating, you know, did you get into a point of like, this is super technically difficult for a movie that's technically only a, you know, smaller budget film? Or
do you remember the logo?
Yeah, it came out a little later in the process. You know, it was just a byproduct of post-production, just going through the motions. The
website design, the silhouettes for each girl, and then we put it in the title, and then
That's our associate producer, Carter Stanton.
Yeah, is it any of the
gallery? The website design became a whole, because obviously, like I said, we shot everything with green screens. We had an idea of what the website would look like, but it wasn't until post that we sorted it all out. And we had done some poster comps, and we had our own ideas for the logo, and in one of the poster comps, there was a version of that, and we were like, oh, that's pretty awesome.
I mean, I thought the girls had really great chemistry, and bitchy when it was supposed to be bitchy, and then sincere when it was supposed to be sincere. I mean, how did you come up with your own interpretation of how you ended up there? I mean, did you have a lot of time to get to know each other?
Hello, how are you? I actually had a really wonderful time speaking with Nick quite often about Heather's character and where she came from. There was a really elaborate backstory of her being found in Vegas, as you heard in the film, making $5 footlongs at Subway. So we just went from there. We just ripped off that. And it kind of just fit in really nicely with, I think, our own characters. I can't speak for all the other girls, but I think casting was really wonderful. Go S&M. Okay, so that was my process, just really discussing with Nick and then tapping into that genre of style of girl that you would see online and just doing a lot of back research, which did involve watching a lot of footage. And that's all I'm going to say. Thanks.
Hey guys, I'm Zuleika, played Anna. And for the movie, I didn't actually shoot up or anything as research, but I did watch a lot of videos as well, and talking to the crew before shooting. And you know, it's good to build a backstory to know the psyche of your character, and just really understanding where a girl like that comes from, and kind of what will lead a person like her to, you know, to end up there, and you know, going back and forth, because it was hard for me to relate to her at first, but just, I didn't go to Skid Row, but I did watch a lot of documentaries, a lot of heroin addicts, and just really understanding that, it allowed me to dig deeper. But just being in the house, and it just made it more believable. And like being in Canada, and it was so cold, and there was times where I would walk in set and, you know, Celine was just sitting there with this mask on, and I would actually get so creeped out. So I mean, just being there and, you know, having your backstory and also just being there, it just ties it all together. So it was really fun overall, for sure.
Hi, I'm Alice. I didn't do any research, I just showed up. I looked pretty.
You're good at that.
Yeah, there you go, thank you. I will say the casting was incredible. Like, I mean, I was working on something else, completely different kind of project, and I got the script and I read it and I was like, oh god, tits and whatever. Okay, so, you know, put it to the side, but, you know, I originally had auditioned for Erin Agostino's character, who plays Ali's best friend in the movie. And then this girl, something happened and I ended up doing this. I was like, okay, do I have to take my shirt off? I don't know. And I got set that day. Immediately I was like, oh my god, these girls are awesome. Like, they're good actors. I was like, oh, thank God. You know, I wasn't sure if I was going to show up on set and there was going to be a bunch of porn stars. No. Gorgeous, like, gorgeous personalities, really, really awesome characters, and the writing lent itself to real people. And it was just, so from that point on, it was really easy. My character's kind of like the master of ceremonies. You know, she's, I don't know if she's really a lesbian. She's free. She's free-spirited, and she's just trying to get by like the rest of us. But yeah, I think, you know, everybody made it so easy, so it was a lot of fun.
They put a really big effort for us to always stick together and go out. Like, we went out a few times.
We went to a strip club.
We did go to a strip club.
Talk about that.
So it did actually happen because it was, I think, a big ensemble effort. All the girls were really supportive of each other, especially with all the scenes that require nudity or big things at stake. So we were all there for each other when all those scenes were going down for moral support, but then also just to be there for a big pat on the back, because those things are hard to do. It was a lot of fun, so thank you.
I love the ensemble movie, and I love Ali as well. Talk about the casting. Talk about what that was like. I mean, you know, obviously, not to dance around it, nudity is a huge part of this movie, although I thought you guys did a really good job of, I mean, you know, it is a movie with violence, it is a movie with nudity, but it is done, chaste sounds weird to say, but like, it's not a salacious movie. It is a movie that sucks you in, but then actually, you know, it's made like a real movie, if I can say that. But talk about casting. How did you approach the fact that we're not, you know, I know you could be two reputable young men, but we're not making a, you know, a porn film in disguise, or just talk about how you found the actresses, how you went about it, what were you looking for as an ensemble and whatnot.
It was certainly challenging. I mean, we're not, you know, it's not like we're a known entity. We're not Miramax, and we're not David Fincher putting out a call for, you know, a sort of a known commodity. Like, so Brook Street Pictures were relatively unknown. And you know, the sort of slug line for the casting, for the auditions, was kind of like, you know, chick in a porn house getting chopped up. So it was tough, and we saw a lot of really pretty subpar candidates, and it was so important to us that we had real actors, that we had people who could pull this off. We didn't want the movie to be porn. We wanted it to be about people doing porn in kind of like a weird Boogie Nights sort of way. And so, you know, we didn't want it to be tawdry. We needed some nudity, and we wanted it to feel sort of organic to the story and not overly gratuitous. We made a decision with Kylie, even in the script phase, that we would not ever see her naked. We wanted her body to be like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, where you just were sort of like, it's got to be so awesome, I want to see it, but you're never really allowed. And her sex appeal comes through regardless. But yeah, we didn't want it to be about the nudity. We wanted everybody to pull out, and these guys are amazing. I mean, the whole cast really nailed it, and we were really proud of just how, again, these girls kind of took a flyer. They came to this weird audition about a creepy slasher film set in a porn house, and then flew up to Canada with these, and it's like, what the hell are we doing here? And you know, they went along for the ride. But yeah, I think it was important that people were kind of hip to the message. We I'll say what we wanted to make sort of a commentary about online pornography. We kidded around early on that we wanted to do to online pornography what Jaws did to the beach, which was ruin it, or at least make you think twice about it, because it's a little bit too fast and carefree, and this is sort of the cautionary tale. So, anything you want to add about the casting?
Just that I'm so proud of everyone that ended up in this film, and I think that the casting is fantastic. We loved working with you guys and with everyone that was a part of the cast, and we spent months and months casting, and I just couldn't be more proud of everyone that worked on this film with us. So, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, he's not here, but talk a bit about Slain. I mean, I actually think that, again, this is my second time seeing the movie, and I think the first half of the movie, as much as you can make a sympathetic killer and a silent killer, I mean, there are moments of emotion, let's say, that come out of him, and I like that. I think it's good. I mean, obviously, chopping a young lady's fingers off and death by dildo, ultimately, not a model citizen. But I do think you spend a fair amount of time setting up a character that there is sympathy for, or a slice of sympathy for. And it's a great performance. I actually recognized him by face. You reminded me that he was in The Town, which I love, and I loved him in that as a presence. And I think just to have an actor who has a presence is difficult. But talk about casting that role, what you wanted in that role.
Yeah, I mean, Slain fucking nailed it. I mean, that guy is just amazing. And he's a rapper from Boston. He's a very gangster, just a tough guy. Ben Affleck discovered him, and he was in Gone Baby Gone. A friend of mine that I grew up with was the local casting director on Gone Baby Gone, and actually discovered Slain. Ben, in Gone Baby Gone, I think in the book, the character that Slain played was something totally different, like an albino Swede or something weird. And Ben was like, "Nah, I want like a hardcore gangster dude from like Charlestown or something." And he sent my friend out to just scour the city, and he met all these rappers from Boston, and he met Slain, and he was like, "You're the guy." So when we were casting Loverboy, we were having a hard time because again, we're kind of like, if you're David Fincher and you put out that call, you don't have any problems. But when you're Brook Street Pictures and you're kind of unknown and you're still building your reputation, it's a hard role to fill, and to fill well. So I called my friend, he got in touch with Slain, and Slain was like, "I've always wanted to do a slasher, this is fucking awesome." You know? He read it, and he was like, "I'm in." And then he had some conflict, and he couldn't make it, he backed out. "Oh shit, now what do we do?" And we just said, "You're coming, you're doing it," and we flew him up. And he wasn't there for that long, but he just nailed those scenes in the early part of the movie. That's, I would say, in addition to kind of gambling with that classical structure of having the kills start really late, certainly that's something we try to do differently than the sort of more conventional slasher, where you hit the ground running with the killer. Leatherface is already Leatherface, or what, so we thought it would be interesting to try to see the sort of the growth into the killer. And we had women on the set who were watching some of the scenes, like when he cries, and "Oh, I feel so bad for him." It's like, really? He's about to start chopping people's heads off. So I think it brings an interesting dynamic to the film, certainly. And yeah, I mean, all praise to Slain. And by the way, there are about three of his songs in the movie. Probably the most meta moment in the movie is when it's after the office scene, he comes back and he's all angry, and he logs on, and he's talking to the blonde, to Devin, asking where Kylie is, and she's doing a dance to a Slain song. So that's kind of a little Easter egg for you guys.
Yeah, Slain was fantastic, and I think another thing that really builds sympathy for him is the opening prologue sequence, when you see him as a young boy, and the two little girls that kind of tease him and make fun of him and point at his
penis,
his penis, and call it an acorn.
Tallywhacker.
Tallywhacker. Yeah, I was trying to think of the right one. Yeah, but I mean, obviously that would mess a kid up, I mean, obviously to do that, but then to get away with it, and we thought about that for him. I mean, 30 years later, this kid never went to jail for it. He got away with it. It looks like an accident. The bike was in the water. The little girl was in the water. And what would that do to your psychology, you know, to be somebody that got away with something like that, and to be that tormented by women from such an early age. But Slane's fantastic. You know, he's really just. I couldn't believe when I saw the tears coming out of his head, and even when he walks towards the mannequin, he's got these little twitches, and I mean, he was really in character. And yeah.
Was that him, in fact, the whole time in the house and whatnot, or was there?
Oh no, he wanted to stay for the whole thing, but again, there was all kinds of conflicts, and he ended up only really being on set for 3 or 4 days, and. I was in the Loverboy costume at one point. We had two stunt actors working in the. I mean, I think everyone took a round in that thing at one point or another. Quickly, throw the mask on, throw the costume on, and jump in front of the camera. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah, he wanted to be there for the whole thing, and but he had another movie he was shooting, and so we actually, with I think 3 or 4 days before we started the shoot, we sat down with the first AD and we redid the entire schedule so that we could shoot Slane out in the whole Loverboy part in like 3 or 4 days. And that was everything out of the mask. And he was like, "But I want to be in the mask." And we're like, "Well, then we can't have you at all. So we're just going to have to go with this hybrid approach." And so there are scenes with him in the mask, but it's mostly his stunt double.
I got a huge reaction here. I think it is probably my favorite sequence of the movie. Mia, is that her name? The Mia character when she escapes from the sauna. So, which is interesting because everyone's always like, oh, people just want to see every character, you know, sort of, as I call them, walking meatloafs, die. And in fact, I think most people were thrilled that she escaped, and I was surprised that she escaped. I like that. Of course, dies moments thereafter, but at least she made it out of the sauna. Talk a bit about that, because I actually think, as a horror filmmaker, or writer and filmmaker, the idea of teasing the audience, messing with the audience. I mean, there's something cruel about it, but that's what you want. Is you want like that you're going to get you are going to get away, and then then you're going to die. So I think what went into that moment, and was that always scripted that way, or?
I would say that was one of the many homages and sort of nods to prior films and other sort of iconic films in the genre. I think that. I can't put my finger on any single moment right now, but certainly the Friday the 13th series would do that, every now and then, and we just loved the idea of Mia's a small character, and from a dialogue standpoint, she wasn't featured all that much, and we thought it would be cool to just sort of like late in the movie give this whole set piece to this kind of lesser character, and let her have that triumphant moment. We even had. We had a couple of cutaways to the guy in LA and the kid in Chicago and the guy in Tokyo, and we shot more of that stuff. It became a little bit too cutty. We wanted this kind of Truman Show element where you kept cutting away to other fans, so it wasn't just the redhead at the computer there. And so when she got out of the sauna, we had a series of triumphant reactions where it was like, yeah, she did it, and then we thought it would be fun to just sort of pop that balloon right away. So that's what we did.
Cruel bastard.
Yeah.
What is your favorite slasher film or horror film? If you don't like, we'll go right down the line. If you don't like slasher horror, I'm always fascinated because some people like monster horror, like me. Some people like fantastic horror. Some people like straight up necromantic, fucked up horror. But tell me, favorite horror film and why?
Oh, jeez. I'm kind of partial to the original Halloween. I don't know why. There's just something about. I like the slow burn.
Because it's great.
Because it's awesome. Yeah. It just feels so 70s to me, and it's like all the. I'm a sort of a 70s film buff. I like the slow burn and the kind of the long time to set up characters and get stuff going, and Halloween does that to a T. The tiny knock against it is if you go back and watch the Halloween, the first hour, there's almost nothing going on. And so that's kind of, again, we went and watched it, and we were like, the second half of this movie is amazing, and you need the first half, but what if you filled the first half with something a little bit more interesting than just Jamie Lee Curtis walking down the sidewalk the whole time? So, but what Carpenter pulled off, especially in that time and with that budget, I think that's kind of the master of the slasher genre. Anyway.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of horror films over the last decade or so since I started Brook Street Pictures, because the first few movies I've invested in are horror films. And you know, I grew up watching horror films. I remember watching Candyman as a kid, and that movie messed me up. But I have to say, if I had to pick a favorite, I always kind of lean towards like a strong leading male, you know, and like a character or somebody that's kind of a badass. So I think of like The Thing, Kurt Russell, how kind of cool his beard was, and just you know, just I don't know. I guess maybe The Thing, like I don't know if it's 80s. The Exorcist, I think it's late 70s, or The Shining, I think was early 80s. I mean, those are movies that for me, it doesn't matter what point you catch it on late night TV. I just can't turn it off once I see any frame from some of those movies. So yeah, you know, I'm a fan of the genre, and there's just so many good ones out there.
I have two. My first one is High Tension, and then Carrie. I just love Carrie. That's it. Yeah.
High Tension.
High Tension.
That was
So I had a lot of time to think, but I hate horror. I'm here like, Zuleika, come on, you're at a horror film festival. Think of something. Does Gone Girl count? Is that,
Sure.
That's kind of like slasher horror. I just watched that recently and I was petrified. So, I get scared really easily. I remember when Friday the 13th came out, every time I used to go in the shower, I used to like literally like take like 10 seconds to open the curtain, and then, you know, there was no one there, thank God. But yeah, no, I don't like horror films, and I love Girlhouse.
Speaking of showers, I think Psycho is still, like, I can watch that anytime and be terrified. I'm a big fan of, like, weird, messed up. Like, I just watched Funny Games for the second time recently. Love that movie. Anything that makes you kind of go, I'm into. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. What was that movie where the little girl would sit in that TV screen and it's just like... My mom used to play that for us. Can you believe it?
So if any of her friends are here, they sell a shower curtain that has the Mother Norman Bates on it. So someone get that for her. No, I'm just kidding. One quick thing before we go to the audience. Also, I want to give your makeup effects guys here in the house.
Yes.
Somewhere, who came up with stumpy fingers.
Stumpy fingers. Yes, Trayson. Stand up, Trayson. You're responsible for those disgusting little stuff.
And then also talk about the aspect of using score as sound design. So talk about just quickly using Tom and Andy, how you came up with that idea.
We just knew we wanted something fresh and kind of modern. You know, we talked about kind of like the sort of the catchphrase was, let's do the Social Network score for horror. You know, like can we do that? And so I think that but you know, it's funny because the slasher sort of often wants maybe a slightly more orchestral, classical kind of sound, but we kind of wanted to blend this very fresh, modern, synthy, computery, techno-y thing with some classical elements. So like the Loverboy theme that I don't know if you guys remember in the prologue, but when the little boy runs away from them after the girls have made fun of him and he hops over that fence, I mean, the score just swells and it's like this beautiful melody that then comes back a couple times in the film. It's the Loverboy theme, and it, you know, when Kylie, an hour and a half later, when Kylie looks out the window and sees him at the pool and he looks up, it's the same music there, and it's this very haunting kind of thing. And then the Kylie music, the scene, the walk and talk by the river, where they kind of have the big relationship scene. There's just some beautiful stuff in there that's kind of on the piano, and it's the Kylie theme, and that sort of morphs into her sort of music towards the end of the movie as well. But yeah, Tom and Andy are amazing and just did a fantastic job. So.
Fred. Hi, Fred.
My
micro and a macro question. The
Okay.
micro question, how did you get the Bruce Lee poster to fall at just the right time?
That was a complete accident.
It was an accident the first time. That's what happened. It wasn't, we had it propped against the wall instead of fastened to the wall or something, and when she stormed out, it fell, and we were like, oh, can we do that on every take now? So,
we debated cutting out of that earlier for a little while because it hangs just long enough where it's kind of fat in the movie, but we had to keep it. It was too cool, so yeah.
What went into the Loverboy mask?
I think it was Carter, assistant producer, that found that particular one. Associate producer, and you know, we all had a look at the pictures, and it was perfect. It was kind of looked half Asian, but also kind of just really white, and it's just it was creepy.
Yeah, we wanted him in a woman mask, and then, you know, just cutting the lips off, we felt was I don't know, just made it a little different than the, you know, just kind of the Michael Myers mask. We basically just scoured the internet for woman mask for a while and found some company in like the Czech Republic or something that made them.
It was an ordeal to get that. Like I think we got 4 of them, and just getting them shipped. I think they arrived like 3 days before we started shooting or something like that, and it was
1 day.
It was 1 day before we started shooting. So we had backup. We had all kinds of backup options, but when those ones arrived finally from wherever we ordered them, the third world country somewhere, they arrived, and they were perfect. So we just stuck with them.
Were any of you girls like really scared when you were getting killed? Like,
No, Brittany. Well, thank God there was a stunt man that kind of walked me through it.
No, it was awesome.
Yeah, he was amazing.
It was awesome.
I mean, it was scary. Just being in the house was scary to me, at least. Like, I was in the basement sometimes by myself, like, you know. No, but, I mean, it was more technical than anything. So, like, when, you know, I was getting choked, like, my hands were holding it. So, I mean, I wasn't actually getting choked, thank God. But it was scary, I guess. Yeah. No. They helped me out a little bit.
You scared?
Yes, I had a dildo in my mouth. And then I had it duct taped and saran wrapped to my face. So that was kind of awesome.
Did they actually trim it? I mean, how did that go?
Yeah, we had like a deep throat test of where they needed to trim it. It was super aggressive. Yeah, it was like,
How far?
okay, how far can you take this back where it's comfortable? And I'm like, well, technically we should practice. So it was really interesting.
Also, we did that one in one take.
And we did, yeah, that was a one take.
Yeah.
That one shot. So it was the same.
The
it
whole
was,
scene.
Yeah, it was really awesome. Mike Shute was the stunt guy, and we worked that pretty hard, pun intended. So it was pretty good. Like, I think the only scary part was just messing up and having to restart. Like, really, it was like Zuleika said, it was more technical than anything because you needed to be careful. But yeah, I'm just glad I didn't have a stuffed nose that day because then I really couldn't breathe. But it was a lot of fun.
I'd like to know what kind of research into serial killers, if you did any.
We didn't do any sort of serious research on serial killers. I think we kind of reverse engineered the role a little bit more. We kind of, we came up, you know, the concept was the slasher in the porn house. That felt like the way to sort of update the genre a little bit. I mean, the slasher is very steeped in these kind of literary and puritanical traditions of punishing promiscuity, you know, like it's always the pretty people going off to fuck in the cabin that get killed, right? And they're being punished for that. And so we felt like the online porn culture is sort of a weird, perverse extension of that, and that the culture has gotten very loose with our sexual mores, and this, it just felt ripe for rebooting the slasher in that world. And so we knew the killer, we kind of just built him backwards. We said, what kind of guy would be interesting once he's in the house. So we thought the woman mask, but with this kind of big burly body. And then when you extend it backwards, you sort of realize that there's sort of the perfect killer in the making, which are these guys sitting at their computer screens, falling in love with women they will never know, will never meet, and thinking that they have sort of real relationships with them when they don't. They're just paying. I mean, they're just paying money to watch and jerk off, right? So that fucks with your head, does damaging things to your psyche. Combine that with this little, the idea that this is also an adult version of a kid who got away with killing somebody. He's a ticking time bomb, right? So it doesn't take much to set him off. And so, just to answer your question, by the time we'd sort of built him, we were like, there are sort of behaviors that are associated with him that certainly fit Ted Bundy, the chopping off the fingers and chopping off the heads and stuff like that. I mean, it fits a pattern of sort of certain serial killers, I guess. But the Ted Bundy quote just seems so appropriate, the idea that pornography can contribute to your sense that you can just sort of, physically own women, that they're objects to be, toyed with is really what sort of we were going for there.
That thought process comes out clear in the quote, but then this movie is mostly female cast, female lead, and certainly in a lot of ways a female empowerment film, and it really is despite the genre and the title, it's actually kind of anti-porn. This whole idea of doing to porn what Jaws did to the beach. Anyway, but no, we're very proud of the film, and I think especially on the budget that we had and the constraints that we had to make it, it was a fantastic shoot. It's the best crew and the best cast that I've ever worked with, and thanks to everyone for coming out and supporting us tonight. It's much appreciated.
Thank you. And thanks to Garrick. Thank you, Garrick. Thanks, guys.